to the More Knits podcast. My name is Abby, and this is a video podcast about knitting and knitwear design. I am most active on Instagram, but I'm also on Ravelry. On Instagram, you can find me as more.knits, and on Ravelry, you can find me as Abby Moreland. I am a knitter and an aspiring knitwear designer living in the northwest of the United States. I learned to knit about 10 years ago, and I've been knitting more seriously for about a year or a year and a half, and I'm really just getting into pattern designing. I have a few patterns for sale currently, but I'm also working on a few more designs, and I'm really enjoying that. This is episode 6, I believe, of the More Knits podcast. So I didn't film last week. I skipped a week because life was really crazy. I actually did film, and I just really wasn't happy with what I recorded and the knitting that I had gotten done. I just wasn't happy with it, and so I decided to wait until the weekend and refilm it. I had tried filming it on a weekday, and the lighting wasn't great, and I was really tired, and all of those things just, you could just tell that it wasn't a great episode. So I'm refilming it, and episode 6. Thank you so much for subscribing and for leaving me messages on Instagram and some comments on YouTube about how you're enjoying the podcast. We also have a group on Ravelry for the podcast, as well as for kind of my knitting journey. And so if you're interested in that, I will link everything down below. I will also have show notes typed out in the description box, and they will be in the Ravelry group as well. So if you're interested in anything that I'm sharing today, you will be able to find it, I promise. If you have any issues, just let me know, and I will be able to tell you what yarn and whatever else you're interested in from this video. So I want to jump right in. I will talk about life a little bit later, probably at the end of this episode. So if you're interested in that, interested to know why maybe I haven't gotten as much knitting done, even though I did take a week off from podcasting, stick around for that. But if you're just interested in the knitting, we are going to jump right in. And I'm going to start with finished objects, as always. But before I jump into that, I wanted to mention that my latest shawl design, the Ode to Spring shawl, and here's a preview of it. This shawl is currently being tested, and the test actually finishes up next week. So I hope over the next week or two that this pattern will be published and out for sale. So I just wanted to mention that because I did show this as a finished object a couple episodes ago, and it has been in testing, and I've been working on this pattern since then, and we're nearing the end of testing, so I wanted to mention that. This is a garter stitch and brioche shawl. I'm not going to try it on just because I've shown it before, but if you are interested in that, there will be photos on my Instagram, and I'll definitely share on YouTube on the podcast when that's published as well. But that's really exciting, so I wanted to share that. Okay, I'm going to have a sip of coffee. My allergies have been really bad recently, as I think a lot of people are experiencing this season, and my throat's really kind of scratchy, and there might be quite a few different cuts throughout this video as I'm, drinking water and trying to preserve my voice a little bit so that it doesn't sound extremely hoarse because I know it's sounding a little bit rough right now. Okay, so now I want to get into finished objects, and I actually have another shawl design. So I know I've been working on 2 shawls recently, and I've really been enjoying shawl designing, and I already have an idea for another one that I want to design. So we'll see about that. I'm working on a couple of different things right now, and one of my goals as a designer is also to design a sweater over the next few months. So I will also probably be working on that. I'm kind of just waiting for inspiration to strike. But in the meantime, I've been working on shawls and really enjoying it. So I shared this shawl, not in my last podcast, I don't think. I think it was the podcast before that, because last podcast I was still trying to figure out the details. I was trying to figure out the edging for the shawl, and I changed it, I think 3 times. I had 3 different stitch patterns. I charted everything out and worked out all of the increases into the different stitch patterns that I'd chosen, and I really just wasn't in love with it. It worked, and it sit right in the shawl, but it didn't, I just wasn't in love with it. So I ended up taking it out a lot, re-knitting it, knitting a bunch of different swatches, trying a bunch of different stitch patterns, altering all of the different stitch patterns to try to get what I wanted. And eventually what I ended up with was actually quite simple. It was a lot more simple than I was originally going for. And it was kind of a lesson of sometimes simple is better, and sometimes trying really complex, extravagant things doesn't always look the best. So anyway, I haven't woven the ends, but I have blocked this shawl, and so I want to share it. This is another triangle shawl. This is knit from the top down, and it's pretty large. It is a pretty huge shawl. Sorry. So this is, the body is very textured, pretty simple, and then the edging is this lovely lace, and yeah, I really like how the lace turned out. I didn't do the best blocking. Like, I kind of feel like I need to block the edging again, especially towards the center column. But let me situate this right so I can show you. I really like how that ended up with the increases. I just think that worked out really well, and I put a lot of work into that to make it look really nice and finished and neat. And then the rest of the shawl is this really nice texture, which was a stitch pattern that I found, and I ended up altering it to really fit the aesthetic of the shawl design that I was going for. So I'm really happy with this shawl. I really love it, even down to like the garter stitch edging on the bottom, all around, and I think that these increases with the stitch pattern worked out really well too, and this is probably my favorite design to date, which seems to be a trend. I kind of fall in love with whatever I finished last the most. This is knit out of worsted weight, so this knit up so quickly, and I'm dying to knit another one. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to knit another one and test my own pattern. I will also have it tested and tech edited as all of my patterns by other people, but I kind of want to knit another one and test my own pattern, or maybe I'll do a knit along when I release this pattern. That'll be kind of in time for fall, or right before fall, and so it's kind of the perfect time to do that. So I don't know, I think it depends on whether or not there's enough interest in it, but yeah, I do want to try this on. So here it is on. I can't tell if it's exactly sitting as it should, but this is the shawl. This is kind of how I would wear it most often, is just wrapped around my neck with the point in the front here. And it's a really big, cozy shawl. It's exactly what I was wanting for the fall, to really snuggle up in. It's so warm, but it feels so nice on. These are my favorite types of shawls to wear, and so I've just really been loving designing shawls like this. And I love the lace at the bottom. I just think it's just really beautiful, and it really fits the shawl design, I think. So I'm really, yeah, I'm just kind of over the moon with how this turned out. I'm so excited to release the pattern. I want to knit a second one. I really enjoyed every single stitch of this, even though I kind of knit it 3 or 4 times with how many times I'd kind of knit the entire body of it before I ended up changing one small thing about the pattern, and then I ended up knitting, like I mentioned, the border part I think 4 or 5 times before I ended up settling on this. So that's the designing process, at least for me it is, and I enjoy it all the time. But it can be frustrating. It can be, it's a lot of time spent, and sometimes not as much to show for all the time that you spent on it. But I do think that that this design shows, it does show how much time I've spent on it. And I started knitting it back in March is when I started this design. And I bought the yarn in Seattle, Washington when I went on a trip there, and I bought it in a little yarn store called So Much Yarn in Pike Place Market, which is an amazing little shop. And I originally bought the yarn for someone else's pattern that I was gonna knit for myself. I was not going to design with it, but as soon as I brought it home, inspiration struck, and I just started, I don't know, it just was like, this yarn wants to be a big worsted weight shawl. So that's what I decided to do with it, and I'm really, really happy with it. Another one of my favorite ways to wear triangle shawls, my voice is still going out a little bit, is to actually bring the tails to the front. The ends are not woven in yet, and tie them in the front like that. It just gives a little bit of a different look, and it sometimes can be a little bit cozier too, because you have that extra bulk on the top rather than underneath. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about this shawl. The pattern will be out over the next few months. It will probably, hopefully I'm not going to have to wait until the fall to release it. I'm hoping to release it, maybe a month before fall sets in, so that you will have time to maybe join a knit along if you're interested, or just start knitting it so that you'll have it for the fall and the winter. And that shawl does not have a name yet. I've been calling it the Plymouth Shawl because I used Plymouth yarn to knit with it, or to knit it. Excuse me. But it doesn't have a name yet, so I definitely still have a lot of work on that. But I have written out the entire pattern, and I've charted out the lace. So I have been working on that a lot the last couple of weeks to get that ready to be published. So that's my only FO this week. Lots of stuff going on in my life right now, and so I really haven't had too much knitting time, but I have been working the past few days. We had a long weekend this weekend, and the past few days I've really been working on a couple of sweaters. So I have socks and sweaters to show you today. And we're going to start with the sweaters because that's what I'm most excited about right now. So first I want to show you my Granito by Joji Locatelli. I've shared this a couple of times on the podcast, and I'm still plugging away on it. It's actually not an active WIP at the moment. And I'll share why that is in just a minute. But here is my progress so far. So I've got probably about half of the body, and then I've also knit the entirety of one sleeve. So I think last time I showed you, I was maybe three quarters of the way down the sleeve, and I ended up finishing the sleeve. And this actually took me a while. The sleeve wasn't too bad. I was trying to figure out the ribbing at the cuff. That took me a really long time because I ended up knitting it probably 5 or 6 times before I was happy with the way that the cuff looked. So I'm gonna scoot up here so you can see. This is the ribbing on the cuff. It's very, it's kind of a subtle 1x1 rib, but it is not, it's not actually 1x1 rib. That is the ribbing that the pattern calls for. And you know how 1x1 rib can sometimes look a bit sloppy? It kind of depends on the yarn and the needles and the gauge, but sometimes it can look pretty sloppy. And it looked very sloppy with this yarn. This is recycled yarn that I found, or that I ripped out from a sweater that I thrifted. So I don't know exactly what kind of yarn it is. It's a blend between wool, alpaca, and acrylic, and I think it's a light fingering weight. So anyway, I've had to change the gauge a little bit on this sweater to make it fit me with this yarn, with the mystery yarn, but it's ended up fitting me perfectly, and the math worked out, and everything is great with this sweater. It actually, like, the sleeve fits me perfectly in the arm, and I'm so excited to wear this in the fall. But back to the cuff. The reason it took me a really long time to figure out what I wanted to do with this is because the pattern calls for a 1x1 rib, and I just wasn't happy with the way that looked in this yarn. So I tried a bunch of different things. I tried 2x2 just to see if that maybe looked better, but I really loved the look, just kind of the minimal, clean look of the 1x1 rib with this pattern. So I wanted to stick with that same look, but just the 1x1 rib wasn't working. So I actually settled on a stitch pattern that I found that I kind of modified, and I'm not sure if what I ended up doing is something that exists. I'm sure that other people have done it. I just don't know if, like, there's a name for it. But I ended up modifying fisherman's rib. It was also called, the stitch pattern I found was called English rib, but I think it's the same as fisherman's rib, which is kind of similar to brioche, but it's not as squishy as brioche. But anyway, I modified it so that you still get the rib look, but it's like the same thickness as the stockinette beneath it. So it doesn't have as much squish, it doesn't have as much airiness, but you still get that subtle 1x1 neat looking rib. So I was really happy with that. It took hours to figure that out and to try to, make it what I wanted it, but once I figured that out, I was really happy with that, and I'm just going to use that stitch pattern on the entire sweater where it calls for 1x1 ribbing. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I know other people have struggled with 1x1 rib sometimes, and you can't really do just straight up brioche, you can't really substitute, or even fisherman's rib, you can't really substitute that. Sometimes you can, but it depends on the pattern. And so I ended up modifying it and making it work for me, and I'm really happy I did, because I'm so much happier with this than I would have been if I just stuck with the 1x1 rib. It looks lovely in Hoge's pattern, in the yarn that she used. It looks great. And her tension, her knitting, it just looks fantastic. But with this yarn, it just wasn't looking right. So I'm really happy with the way that this is turning out. But it is kind of hibernating a little bit. It's off the needles. It's just on scrap yarn right now, because I'm working on a couple of other sweaters that are a little bit more time sensitive. They're a little bit more important to finish first, and I don't have enough needles to keep needles on this. So if I had more needles, I would have kept the needles on this, and I would just be working on this. It's just stockinette in the round right now, so it's really easy. And so if I had more needles, I would keep this on the needles, and I would be working on that every now and then, but for now it is kind of hibernating a little bit, because I just need to finish that by fall, mid-fall, late fall, just whenever it starts getting chilly and when I want to wear it. I'm not in a rush to finish that right now. So I'm still working on it. You might not see it for a couple of more weeks until I start working on that again, but I wanted to mention it because I did put a significant amount of progress on it, and I I'm still loving it, so I'm definitely gonna finish it. It's a great pattern. Okay, moving on. I have a different setup today. I'm filming on the back camera versus the front camera on my phone because it's a much better quality, but that means that I'm like looking in kind of a weird place probably. That's probably what it looks like to make sure that I'm like still in frame and showing you in frame and stuff like that. So hopefully this isn't too weird. Okay, 2 more sweater whips, and I'm so excited about both that I don't know which one to show first, but I think I'm going to show my cardigan first because I'm knitting a lot of black recently. The black shawl, the black sweater, and I just cast on, or I'm knitting on another black sweater, and so I will show you my cardigan because that is not black. So hopefully this doesn't get too boring with all the black yarn. I didn't really intend for that to happen. It just kind of happened. So that's all right. I love black, and it's not too bad to knit with. You get used to it. So this is the Miriam cardigan by Carrie Bostick Hoge, and I just shared this on my Instagram. But I really did just cast on, and I'm still working on the hem. So not very much progress made with this, but I'm very excited to continue working on it. I think right now it's just garter stitch, just flat garter stitch, and so it's very, very simple. And when I was working on this, I was really wanting something that was a lot more like captivating, I think, and drew my attention a lot more than this did. So that's why I set it down. But I'm really enjoying working on it. It's a great pattern right now for when I just want some mindless knitting, and pretty soon I will get to some shaping, but overall the cardigan is very simple. It's a simple garter stitch and stockinette cardigan. It's open in the front, so no buttons. It's pretty small, it's pretty tight fitting, and I thought it would be perfect over summer dresses and you know, t-shirts and blouses in the office when it gets a little bit chilly, you know, because air conditioning in the office, but then it's really warm outside. And so I love wearing cardigans in the summer. I wear a lot of cardigans in the summer, and I just thought this would be perfect for kind of late summer when it starts getting a little bit chillier outside, because I am knitting this out of wool. So this one's a little bit more important to me to finish before fall, just so I do have the opportunity to wear it this season. Of course I can still wear it in the fall. I'll just need, you know, I'll probably need something over it, just because it won't be warm enough to wear on its own as like an outer layer. But the yarn that I'm using is DK weight, which is what the pattern calls for, but I'm not using the same yarn. I think the pattern calls for Quince & Co yarn because that's who she designed the pattern for. But I am using Cascade Yarns Cascade 220 Sport. This is the yarn that I'm using, and it's 100% Peruvian Highland wool. I've never worked with Cascade yarns before, actually. And you know, I've heard great things. I just haven't ever had the opportunity. So I thought this cardigan was the perfect opportunity to try it out. And I actually re-skeined this on my own. And I don't know how to reskein a yarn. I've never done it before, and I've never seen anyone do it before. So I don't actually know if I did it correctly. But like, it kind of looks right. It's a little bit sloppy down here, but I don't know. That's why it looks a little bit sloppy, in case you were wondering. And the colorway that I'm using is 8401, and it's just, I think they really only have one like light gray. That's what I'm using. And I bought this off of the WIPS website, and I think it was on sale as well. So got a really great deal on it. It's really affordable yarn to begin with, and I'm excited to keep working on this and show you more progress, because right now it's not that interesting, but it will be interesting. think that's really all I wanted to share about this. I did go down a needle size to get gauge, which I was pretty happy with. Let's see, where's my gauge swatch? Here it is. I actually knit this gauge swatch 3 times before I decided on what needle I was going to use, or before I got gauge. And I think I went down 1 size. I think I only went down 1 size, but I did swatch 3 times just to make sure that I got gauge, because this is, like I mentioned, a pretty tight-fitting cardigan, and if I screwed up my gauge somehow, that would be pretty sad, because I don't think that I don't know if it would really be salvageable. So I really wanted to make sure that I was getting the right gauge for this cardigan. And I forgot to mention that is living in my fringe supply field bag, which I adore. And I'm also stuffing in this bag my other sweater WIP, which I've definitely been working on a lot more than the cardigan, so I want to share it. This is a sweater that I'm knitting for my boyfriend. He recently graduated, and I'm really proud of him, and so this is his graduation gift. He's getting a sweater. I've never knit him a sweater before. I've knit him socks, I've knit him a cowl, I've knit him like a few small things, but never as big as a sweater. I've actually never knit anyone but myself a sweater. This is the 3rd sweater I've ever knit, or will probably be the 3rd one that I've ever finished, because I am knitting several different sweaters at the moment. So it's pretty special, and it's taking me, it actually hasn't taken me a while. I cast this on last weekend, and as I mentioned, I haven't had a ton of knitting time, so really it's working up pretty quickly, and it is in black yarn, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to see, but this is it so far. And this is, I would say, maybe 2/3 of the body, maybe 3/4. I think I'm going to extend the body a little bit, so I'm getting pretty close to separate for the sleeves, for the front and the back and the sleeves in the pattern, but I think I'm going to lengthen it by a few inches, so I do have a few more inches to go before that happens, but this is it so far. And this is the Fort sweater by Jared Flood of Brooklyn Tweed. It is a beautiful pattern. It's a great sweater. I just fell in love with it as soon as I saw it, and as soon as I showed it to my boyfriend, we were just like, yep, this is the one. So I ordered yarn for it. He picked out the yarn. He picked black, which actually hasn't been terrible to work with. I just have to make sure that I have like a lamp or just enough lighting, because this is an all over stitch pattern, as you can see. Let me hold this up a little bit better. So it's this kind of ribbed pattern. It's very simple, and I think it looks great. And then on the sides there is this 1x1 rib kind of panel that goes all the way down. And then on the hem at the very bottom, it is 1x1 rib knit on a much tighter gauge than the rest of the sweater, so it looks really nice and clean. And then it's also, let me get these ends out of the way. At the bottom of the sweater is also a tubular cast on, so it looks really professional and clean, I think, as most of Jared Flood's patterns look. That's kind of his thing, and I love it. It just looks very professional and very clean, and it fits my boyfriend's aesthetic really well, and so I think he's really going to enjoy this sweater. He really likes it so far. So the yarn I'm using is not Brooklyn Tweed. I wish it was, but it's not. That's okay. I'm using the Drops Lima yarn in the color 8903, but it's just the black color. I think there's only one. And this is actually a DK weight yarn, but I think it's a heavy DK, or I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem like a DK weight to me. And I actually, to get gauge, had to go down a needle size. Here's my gauge swatch. So I thought I was gonna maybe have to go up a needle size in order to match the worsted weight. Don't know if I mentioned that. The yarn calls for worsted weight, or the pattern calls for worsted weight yarn. Whew, it's a little hard to talk sometimes. But I saw that several people had knit this sweater out of this yarn on Ravelry, and so I thought, you know, I'm just gonna kind of take the risk, and if it doesn't work, then, you know, drops is pretty inexpensive, and so I can find something else. But it ended up working out great, and this is so it's 65% wool, 35% alpaca. So it's really nice. It feels very nice. It's not extremely soft, but it's not rough either. I'm not sure if he'll want to wear it next to his skin. He might want to wear something underneath it. But if he wanted to wear it next to his skin, it's not scratchy. It's just not like luxuriously soft. But it is very like hard wearing, I think, and it's going to match his lifestyle pretty well, I think. I think it'll really be suited toward him. So I've been loving working on this. I've been working on it a lot, which is how I've gotten so far on it. I kind of didn't realize that I'd gotten this far until, I don't know, I just like stopped working on it so he could try it on, and I was like, wow, I've actually knit quite a bit on this. Like I'm getting, I just finished the shaping, and so now it's just knitting in the round with these panels on the sides, and yeah, it's kind of a joy to work on, honestly. I really, really like working on it. And it feels really nice to knit someone that I love a sweater as well, because I've only ever knit sweaters for myself, and I don't knit very often for other people. It's a huge commitment. It's a time commitment, it's a money commitment, and it's kind of a creative commitment as well, because I'm having to put my, my designs and, sweaters for myself and other things that I'm working on kind of on hold a bit as I work on this. And so it feels really good to be committed to that, though, and I'm really enjoying working on it. I'm using my Chow-Gu needles. I think everything I've shown so far I've worked on with my Chow-Gu needles. I have the interchangeable set that I bought a few months ago, 6 months ago, something like that. As soon as I realized that I was really into knitting, and I had been working on Knit Picks needles for a really long time, and so I just decided to invest in the set, and I do not regret that purchase in the least. I think it was probably like my best purchase. So love Chow-Gu needles. I love the interchangeable set. Totally worth the money. If you think about it, it's really not that much money for needles, but I know it feels like a lot when you invest in a set. Believe me, I know I'm a student. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. So yeah, I do what I can to invest in my hobbies. I think that's everything I wanted to share about that pattern. I haven't made any modifications. I'm making the smallest size, and so yeah, I'm really liking it so far. And I don't think it'll be finished the next time I show you this. Really, I just need to finish it by the fall, because it's not like he's gonna be able to wear it this summer. But the reason I'm focusing on that is because it is a gift, and I don't want that to linger. I really want to finish it, give it to him, and keep that commitment of making him a sweater, and not have it fall to the into a, not put it in a bag and kind of stuff it to the back of my projects. I really want to finish that and work on it, and really want to work on it and finish it. That's what I'm trying to say. Have some more coffee. Okay, I hope my voice is not giving out too much. It tends to do that when I record these podcasts, because this is probably the most I talk in one sitting. I don't think I really talk this much anywhere else in my life, so my voice is not really used to just talking and talking and talking. Okay, so I have a couple of sock whips. Only one of them is interesting because the other one, I've only gotten like an inch since the last time I showed you that. So I'll just show you them so you know that I'm still working on them. But one of my sock whips is in this little zippered bag that my little sister made for me several years ago for Christmas, and I really love it. It's kind of the perfect size for socks as well. So if you remember, probably a couple episodes ago, I showed a sock design that I was working on, and I'm still working on that. I'm still working on knitting the sample because those socks are no longer the sample. I knit a short row heel for those, and I wrote out it in the pattern, and that was going to be in the pattern, and then I decided to change the heel to a heel flap and gusset instead of a short row heel because that just fits me so much better, and I've been hearing a lot of people say that that fits them better as well, and I really wanted to incorporate a heel that a lot of people like and prefer. So I know that, you know, it might actually be split 50-50, but my reasoning is it's easier to insert a short row heel on your own than it is to insert maybe a heel flap and gusset. And so I wanted to write that out so that you'd have that in the pattern, and then if you have your own short row heel that you prefer, you can just easily switch out the heel and just knit whichever heel that you want. So all that to say, I'm re-knitting the sock sample, and I'm knitting them on DPNs. The pattern has 4 sizes, I think, and it's also written out. There's written instructions for both double pointed needles and both double pointed needles and magic loop for every single technique. If you knit your socks on 9-inch circulars, it will be really easy to convert it. But I know that converting a pattern written for magic loop to a double pointed needle sock technique, if you are not very familiar with socks, if you're a pretty new sock knitter, I know that can be really hard or maybe just intimidating, and so I was really hoping to kind of eliminate any barriers to knitting these socks. No matter what size you knit, no matter what technique you knit them on, you will be able to knit these socks. So it's a very simple design, and the way that I'm knitting the stitch pattern is kind of weird because not all of the stitches on the stitch pattern are on one needle, and so it's gonna look a little bit weird. Like there's this stockinette piece here that's kind of hard to. I'm knitting the stitches evenly on all the needles rather than dispersing them so that the one needle holds all of the stitches in the front. So that's why it looks a little bit weird, but I think you can still get the idea. It's just a really simple broken rib pattern. This, again, was another stitch pattern that I modified to really just fit the look that I was going for. And then the 1x1 twisted rib cuff is a classic. I actually knit this cuff probably 6 different times because I was trying out different ribbing, and ended up going with the 1x1 twisted rib, which is what I designed in the first place. But anyway, really, you know, making kind of slow progress on these. Sock mojo is not extremely high at the moment. I've really been into sweaters, but I'm still really enjoying this pattern. And the yarn that I'm using is, I think it's called Valley Yarns. Yeah, it's called Valley Yarns. It's from the WIPS website, and I'm pretty sure that it's the WIPS yarn, so you can only buy it on WIPS. But this is a really beautiful kind of caramel color or camel color, or somewhere in between. And it's really soft. It's I bought several different skeins, just fell on the floor. It is 75% fine superwash merino wool and 25% nylon. So it's kind of perfect for socks. It's superwash, it's really soft, it has that nylon in it, and it's really affordable. I found it on sale, but it is really affordable to begin with. Yeah, so Valley Yarns, and then this is the Huntington yarn. I hope you can see that. Anyway, I just saw it on their website, decided to give it a go. I've never heard anyone talk about it before. I'm sure people use it. I just had never heard anyone talking about it, so I decided to try it, and I really, really like it. I think it might be my new go-to sock yarn, or one of them at least. And then the last thing I wanted to mention with these socks, I won't go on and on about them because they are a design, and the design's not out yet, and you've seen them before. But I'm working these on size US 1s, size US 0s instead of US 1s. These are my Knitter's Pride Zing needles, which I love for double pointed needles, especially for sock knitting. But I just really wanted to try my socks at a tighter gauge, and I'm really loving the tighter gauge. So that kind of, I don't know if that gives you an idea, but I feel like they're going to fit a lot better. They're going to wear better, and I'm really liking it. I just don't like knitting it as much. For some reason, that small change in tension just really affects the way that I'm knitting, and it just, like, it feels a little bit more strenuous on my hands. There's a little bit more hand pain, and so I don't know if I just need to get used to this gauge because it's a gauge that I have really never knit on, or I don't know, but I really like the result. And the way that I change the needle is I normally knit a 60 stitch sock, and I cast on the 64 stitch. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Cast on the 64 stitch sock instead, with a smaller needle, which gets me the same size as the 60 stitch sock on US 1s. So, okay, that's it. Not gonna talk about those anymore. Hopefully, next time I talk about them, the pattern will be done, the samples will be done. But I did want to share in this bag, which is just a bag I got off Amazon. I'm still working on the original sample. I kind of lost motivation with these a little bit just because I really want to finish the new sample, because I can't wear these until fall anyway. But they're so close. I literally just have to put in the toe of one of them. They're also an 8-inch long leg. They're a little bit crumply right now, but they're an 8-inch long leg, and so, you know, it's kind of a lot of knitting. One of them's done. And I love these, and I can't wait to wear them. They're just not the socks that I will use in the sample for the pattern. They're just a sock for me. So yeah, I really do, like, here's the heel. I just had to put in the toe. And I almost put in the toe last night. I ended up knitting like a few more rows just to get to the length to put in the toe. I almost put in the toe, and then I pulled the sweater back out, and I was like, nope, I want to knit on the sweater. So I will definitely finish those. And I'm magic looping those, by the way, if you couldn't tell. I will definitely finish these, you know, by the fall, by the time that I can wear them. But I just can't wear socks right now. And so I know I also can't wear sweaters, but I mean, like, I can wear the cardigan that I'm working on over the summer. So I think I'm just not really feeling them right now, but I'm also not feeling them. So anyway, those are all of my WIPs. That is what I'm working on. I can't see, this might ended up being kind of a long podcast, but I did skip a week, so maybe I'm just making up for it, for the lost time. The last thing I wanted to share was, my word, I'm talking so much, a future project. So I am a huge fan of Stephen West, as I think a lot of people are, but I've never knit a Stephen West pattern. And I've had my eye on the Exploration Station since it came out. I've wanted to knit it, and I just never have. I wasn't a huge shawl person when I started knitting, and but I am now, and so I would love to knit an Exploration Station. So I picked out colors, and I bought the yarn for it, and I wanted to share because the colors that I found are a little bit, they're not the opposite of me, but I wouldn't say that they're like really me. They're a little bit, I tried something new, I think. And so I got most of the yarn from Drops. And I picked out 2 different types. So I got the Flora yarn and I got the Nord, I think is how you say that, yarn from Drops. They're both fingering weight yarn. One of them, so the Flora is 65% wool, 35% alpaca. And then the Nord is 45% alpaca, 30% polyamide, and 25% wool. So not as much wool in this one. They're both really soft and they both feel nice. So originally I picked out these 4 colors, and I'm sure that you've seen the expiration station. I'll try to post a photo of it, if not, just so you can kind of picture the different colors in the shawl. But yeah, I originally chose these colors. Purple is definitely my color, but pink is not. And so I kind of went out on a limb with the pink and tried that. And at first I was tempted to pair this together because I just really like neutrals and I really wanted to kind of tone it down. I was like, no, the pink is too much. But I decided I really need to try something new. I need to stretch my my color palette a little bit. And I really like, I'm kind of having a moment with pink. I really like pink. So if nothing else, at least I will think it's beautiful and probably want to wear it just because I really like the color, even if maybe it doesn't go with everything in my wardrobe. But originally decided on this, but had a change of plans, kept the pink in, but what I decided to do is actually exchange the purple for this Valley Yarns Huntington purple skein that I got kind of on a whim. I just wanted to try the yarn, and so I picked out, 3 colors and ended up picking out this purple. And I think it looks so much better with the pink. It's hard to tell when you're ordering online, but I think it looks so much better with the pink. It's the purple. This purple is a much more pinkish purple, pinker toned purple, and so I think it really does look a lot better with the pink than this one does. And I'm going to hold them all up so you can see. This one's a lot more blue, and this one's much warmer toned. So this one's cooler toned, warmer toned, and the warmer toned I think looks a lot better with the pink. So I've decided to, I'll use this for, I bought 2 skeins, I'll use it for like socks or something. I'll find another use for that. But I also happened to buy 2 skeins of this, and so it ended up working out perfectly. So this is going to be my new exploration station, and I'm really excited to cast that on. I really want to cast it on right now. And if I had the needles free, I probably would. I've kind of been, I kind of have a bout of cast-on-itis right now. I'm a pretty monogamous knitter, but I've been wanting to cast on everything, which is good because I've kind of been fluctuating. My motivation to knit has been fluctuating a little bit. I just recently moved. I moved into a basement, and so it's pretty dark down there, and I haven't tried filming in it. I don't film these in the basement, and so I haven't tried filming down there yet, but I just moved. School's over. I've been working full time, and there's just been a lot of stuff. Graduation happened, and family was visiting, and there's just been a lot happening, and it's been I just feel like I haven't really settled, and I haven't really taken a break since everything's happening, and I've just really been feeling exhausted, and I won't get into it, but my anxiety was really high recently, and it was making it really hard to knit and to have the motivation to work on things thankfully I did not lose motivation to work on my designs, and so I've been writing patterns and charting and doing all of the technical side, but in terms of like actually knitting, I just wasn't feeling it for a while. Plus I was working on, you know, my new house, and I didn't buy a house, I'm just renting, but just working to get it set up, and yeah, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of time, but I am really happy to be podcasting again, and I think that's all that I wanted to share. So I'm not sure when I'll cast on my expiration station, but I will once I start finishing up some of these WIPs, and yeah, that's everything. So if you want to find me on Instagram or on Ravelry, that will be linked down below. The Ravelry group will also be linked down below, so feel free to join that if you would like to. And I think that's all that I have to say. So I will see you in 2 weeks, and thank you for watching.